G'day fans and welcome back to another exciting episode of the old DNA Reviews while we have a look at the penultimate episode of Andor, up to episode 11, Mr. Aaron. Now it's pouring with rain outside, it's cold, it's miserable. You're not feeling exactly the best yourself, but otherwise, how you going, Mr. Aaron? All excited and pumped for a bit of Andor action?
I'm fantastic. I'm always looking forward and pumped for Andor action.
I like the sound of that, doesn't it? Eh? So, very good. We've got a very, very special episode to get through tonight. There's been a lot going on. It's taken weeks and weeks and weeks, almost like 2 months to get to this point, and people are popping in and saying hello already, which is absolutely fantastic. Good old Christy's here. Very important, Christy, because we definitely want your Crimson Yawns later on. Don't put them in now. Just wait till the end. And Tracy's joined us once again, which is absolutely fantastic. So we're going to be looking at the episode 11, A Daughter of Ferrix. Which is particularly interesting. And of course, as is per the usual, we have our spoiler alert. So if you haven't seen it, which was like 5 days ago, you must have seen it by now, there will be spoilers. And as always, we shall be discussing various facets of the actual show itself. Are you ready to rock and roll, Mr. Aaron?
There's no time like the present.
Absolutely fantastic. And as always, because the show jumps all over the place, I've grouped certain bits together just to make our lives a little bit easier as we look at this stuff. All right, so first things first, we kick off after what happened after Melshi and Cassian decided to do the bolt on Nurkina. I never get it right, Nurkina 5. And of course, we've got the ships looking for them. And of course, we get to see ourselves a TIE Reaper, which is particularly cool. And for those who don't know what that is, it actually carries troops on board, and you do get to see it in Rogue One. But I thought, straight away, Mr. Aaron is a very funky-looking ship on the screen.
It was. It's one, like you said, you haven't seen it much, so seeing it's a bit of a treat. And I don't know if they've made many toys of it. So the Andor new toy coming soon, I'm sure.
You would think so, even though you would have thought they made it in Rogue One. But, I mean, in Rogue One, it was sort of just buried amongst all the other ships there. Now, I love this one, right? So, poor bastards. They're obviously got a scale cliff, and it really does come under the classic C-3PO line. How did we get into this mess? I really don't know how. And you're thinking, you know what, you could easily just see one dude just dropping off. It's like, but you know they're going to survive, both of them, because they both appear in Rogue One. But if you didn't know that, you'd almost think, we're going to lose somebody. Cassian's clearly got to survive. But I was like, guys, what are you doing?
Well, I was
thinking, needs to be.
When I was looking at that, I was like, if that was me and we'd escaped and I had to like go over a cliff to hide, that'd be the end of it. I'd die. I wouldn't get back. I wouldn't be able to get back up. So.
Yeah, well, the fact that they're not wearing shoes, it's cold and all the rest, and you do sort of feel for the poor bastards. You have to really just push on. I mean, Melshi looks like he's ready to give up, but he gets encouragement from Cassian, and on they go. So they get to the top, and we come across our alien dudes, right? These two puppies, and I honestly looked at this and I thought, well, they look good, but they kind of don't look good. And I've got to admit, this sequence didn't work for me at all. I don't know how you saw it, but I just thought it was a little bit dumb.
There haven't been a lot of aliens in the show, so I was surprised that this was the ones we got. I didn't hate it. I did think some of it was a little bit funny, actually. But they weren't the best looking aliens in Star Wars, were they? I'm not going to buy the hot toys of those two.
Yeah, especially the guy on the left. He's a bit of a dumb shit. And I got to admit, we got to see a galaxy far, far away version of good old Spider-Man. And I thought, yeah, okay. I'm sort of just watching it and like, it's like Shelob from bloody Lord of the Rings or something. And of course, our heroes, these dudes, they're going to say, instead of turning our heroes over to the Empire, which we know they're not going to, because clearly they're not going to go back to prison, they let them go instead. So I looked at that, and of course, one's speaking basic, which is English, and the other one's sort of grunting in Nurkinese or whatever. I don't know. It's brought me out of the moment, as it were, and I thought, yeah, this is a little bit dumb. So
kind of reminded me of when the trolls captured the hobbits in The Hobbit, and they were a little bit slow in deciding if they were going to cook them or not, or let them go, or what they were going to do. It was a bit out of the Andor storyline for me.
Yeah, I agree. Christy said gratuitous aliens, maybe, because people have been bitching and moaning for weeks. Man, there's not enough freaking aliens in this show. Oh my God. Later on, we see an absolute classic of people have been complaining about something, and we finally got it. So, but we'll get to that. Like, it's almost right at the end of the episode, actually. Shane said he had no idea what they were saying. Yeah, they were hard. Even the guy who was speaking English, effectively, was really difficult to understand because, you got squiggly. I got squigglies, which is what they're fishing for in the water. There's no squigglies. I got that part, but the rest of it kind of didn't work for me. Excuse me. And these guys reminded me of the sequel trilogy. Yeah, well, they do look the kind of aliens who would have appeared in those movies. But yes, and the holy Swiss noodles. Yeah, if you're going to get captured by anything, forget the spider web. Just go for the Swiss noodles instead.
That's funny because I thought it looked like Swiss cheese as well. So there you go.
So anyway, the whole thing is they've got a ship. Our heroes want to jump on the ship and bolt. And of course, Melchi is just like bolts and he gets captured. They all get captured. It's the typical the dude who just rushes in, ends up screwing up for everybody. But it was all good in the end, and they took off. Now the thing I had to ask is, you're not entirely clear as to who left. Whether all four of them left, and it turns out apparently the story is all four of them did go. The two aliens, Cassian and Melchi. But in this episode, Cassian doesn't reappear again until he gets to Nimus, right? So you do wonder, was it an eventful trip? Did these guys get into space and suddenly they find there's a Star Destroyer there and they've got to check all their credentials? Very much what happens to Luthen later on in the story. Well, they just fly there quite happily because between leaving here and just getting to Nimus in the room, Nimus, whatever it is, he just appears. So you just wonder if there was any more sagas on the way.
I think I actually think there was, because when they took off it was a quad jumper, wasn't it, or something? Yeah. I didn't even think it was going to take off, and I was like, is that ship even airtight if they make it into space? I kind of do think it would have been one of those hold together, baby, like hold together, just to get wherever they were going. But I guess it wasn't something they showed, so I guess we don't know.
Yeah, you could make a complete subplot out of the fact that the thing flies off and, it's not space worthy. Oh, it's got bits, a bit like in Mandalorian with the Razor Crest is broken down and all sort of stuff. I mean, you could. Clearly they said, no, you know what, we can't be fagged. Just get him to friggin' Nimus and let's get on with the story. But you do wonder when a person gets from one point to another point and you go, well, what happened in between? But clearly it's not important, so it's no big deal. All right, so we jump over to Ferrix, which is probably one of the more important parts of the thing. Was it space worthy? Well, as I agree with Aaron, it could barely take off. So it kind of was a bit dodgy. There's probably a whole sub-story there, and they've just decided to ignore it.
I did think they were going to do the gag where they go, yeah, you can take the ship, and it was going to just get over the mountain and like go bang and then come down over the other side again, and they sort of laugh at it, patch each other's back, and silly humans thought they'd take our ship or whatever.
So Cassian and Melchi finally crawl back to the aliens and go, why'd you give us a dodgy ship? And the aliens go, but that wasn't our ship. Our ship's actually parked over there. That belonged to some other dude. It's the dog barking, the person sort of gag, isn't it? All right, so we're over to Ferrix, and yeah, so we're going past this bit, and we're going to Ferrix, and straight away, some fantastic visuals of good old B2. I thought this was really interesting. How close can you get to the face of a robot? And just visually, it was really interesting. And of course, that then led to this image. And I thought, hang on, is this inspired by HAL in 2001: A Space Odyssey? And for those who don't remember what that looks like, it looks like that. So if you put the red dot up here, right in the middle of B2's eye there, you'd swear they're both exactly the same. I just thought it was an interesting sort of bit of visual footage, which I thought was kind of cool. Nothing more than that, nothing more to be read into it. But we're dealing with the fact that Marva's died, right? And this, you get to see something you don't normally get to see in the Star Wars universe about how droids are treated when their, if inverted commas, masters die. And that line, I don't want to be alone, I want Marva. That's a bit of a tough one to deal with, isn't it, dude? So
yeah.
What do you reckon?
Yeah, that's when you go, okay, and then you wipe the memory.
plug it in and reformat. It was an interesting moment because we are seeing something we don't normally get to see, and it can produce a massive conversation if you wanted to about how droids are treated in the galaxy far, far away. And I'll get to that in a second. Just getting back to the aliens, Colin said, noticed the same thing about, I don't know what you noticed, but something about the ship. Ad said, maybe they have another ship. It doesn't really matter. It's just irrelevant. It was just an observation. So Chrissy said it was like comforting a child. And that's a very interesting point because ultimately, when you look at droids in the Star Wars universe, most people don't show them compassion, right? Now, we've seen it with Luke, obviously, with R2 and whatever else. But what happens when a droid really feels sorrow for the loss of their master? Now, we saw in the sequel trilogy, Force Awakens, R2 shut off for a long period of time. But would it be a common problem? Now, I don't want to go into this long philosophical debate because it's obviously not part of what this episode is, but they're showing you something you don't normally get to see. Now, Marva and B2 had been together for a very, very long time. And clearly it really is the dying master / pet syndrome. But I actually thought it was really well handled. And I've forgotten the guy's name. And the guy there, just gone blank, Brasso, I think it is sympathetic to him, which I think was kind of cool because you are right. You could easily say, shut up, and just plug in the USB stick and press reformat. And even throughout this episode, he was very much sympathetic to B2. So how did you see it all, dude?
Well, it is one of those things where you could do a whole show on droids and stuff in movies, but it is that thing where it's a bit like AI, where you have the little kid and they're like, if you push this button, he's going to bond with you and he will really love you. And then, if it all goes wrong down the track, it's quite sad. And then you've got the other end of it where you've got the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, where droids are your plastic pal who's fun to play with, and they have artificial, different intelligence sort of character traits. Now, in Star Wars, we don't know if they're programmed with character traits or something like C-3PO just happens when it's activated. And it's the same with this. You don't know if it's been programmed to miss its master, or droids in the Star Wars universe do become attached and miss their masters. It's sort of a sentient thing. So it is one of those really interesting things you could go really deep into. I don't know if it'll ever be really addressed, though.
Yeah, because different shows show different things, and we have seen that droids do feel pain, obviously from Jedi in Jabba's palace, and C-3PO getting his leg reattached by R2.
Yeah.
There's a comment from Tracy I'm going to get to in a second. But yeah, you would think, I mean, sentience with droids in the Star Wars universe, I think, has always been there. You are right. There is an element of programming that sort of controls what they do. But clearly, free thinking is allowed and, if anything, encouraged. And B2 has clearly had this massive connection to Marva. Now, they could easily have just said, oh, Marva's died, B2 just, back to normal, right? But
I'll tell you something. That I've always thought about Star Wars. I think droids are programmed to sort of learn from those that are around them. Because if you look at the Imperial droids, they're always sort of very flat and very sort of imperialistic, like they've learnt from who they're around. And in Jabba's palace, you've got the torture droids who are doing what they sort of see around them. And then the rebel droids like R2 and C-3PO are heroic and show those traits. So maybe it's just a learned thing through the programming.
I think you hit the nail on the head, because with B2, clearly Marva would want a droid that interacts with her on a very personal level, and it's probably in the programming, and of course it allows a lot of scope to develop, dare I say it, emotions, and that's probably intentional. So yeah, I would agree with you on that one. Part of the programming that's just evolved over a period of time, because you wouldn't want your pet to be just a like a box on the floor. Tracy said we saw it with Obi-Wan, with Leia and Lola. Yes, we did. I mean, clearly that was intentional, because you need that connection with the kid. I don't know if it's exactly the same thing, but you are on the right track. So yeah, fair call. And Tracy said you see it with K2S. So yeah, so I think we've sort of worked it out that it's the program that allows them to develop a connection with people, because they want that connection in the first place. It's
if you were programming a droid to work in a factory and just do the same job over and over, it doesn't need a personality. But if you were programming a droid like Lola or like a C-3PO that had to work with diplomats or something, the programming would have to be at the level that the people interacting with it were comfortable. So it must be something to do with that.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And it was just very good to see that. I'm sure it's Brasso. I think the guy's name is, was sympathetic to him rather than just saying, yeah, we'll just reboot him as you do. And as I said, yeah, I think the droid, as in B2, is showing more emotion than any other droid we've seen so far. And it certainly did. It was a really touching moment, actually, something you did not expect at all. This is interesting, right? So Marva's passed away. All the women have turned up. And we've got the daughters of Ferrix. And we actually don't know who they are or what they do. It does give the indication of some kind of sisterhood of the planet. And apparently Marvel was in charge of them at one point. So, yeah, I don't know. It's open for discussion to see, well, is it just the name? It's like, the local scout club or something, or is it something a bit more involved? But clearly there's a whole lot of reverence being held towards Marva. And I thought this was kind of cool, even though we don't really know what it is. So, yeah, good.
It is one of those very Star Wars-ish names, isn't it? The Daughters of Ferrix. It's like, one of those sisterhoods or something like that could almost be a cult or a religion. But I guess they might explore it more down the track as the story unfolds.
Yeah, exactly. I think because Marva had connections since from the Clone Wars, it may have had something to do with that there. I don't want to get into speculation, and of course, I don't want to sort of like head down paths that are completely off the tangent. You are right, Daniel. Yeah, you did see it with Chopper and Heron and Rebels as well, which was important for that series because it was aimed mainly at children, and of course, you want people to relate to Chopper as well as his connection with her. The women run things behind the scenes. Yes, they do. And that's actually what this series has really brought out. There's a lot of strong female characters, and it's really good to see, actually. And I enjoy it when you see female characters interacting with each other. And it's almost, they're not banging heads, but they're like, what do you call it? Alpha females dealing with each other. It's really, really great. And I love it. You don't see enough of it in the galaxy far, far away.
Do you know what I like about Andor on that? It just is natural. It isn't like they've gone, this is the female, so they're running things, and haha, look what we've done. It just seems like all the characters are written naturally, and that's how they should be. And I really enjoy that in this series, that it isn't being a wheelbarrowed agenda is being pushed out because that's how Hollywood have to make things. This actually really just seems like that's how all the characters would behave, and it comes across really great.
Totally agree with you. So, as we noted, like Marva's passing is treated with great reverence, and obviously she was a massive figurehead for the show, for the city. And I like this one, right? So, Cinta now has a job. Only started last week, if you believe what she says, as the doing all the drinks and all the stuff in the bar. And now I don't know if you picked up on this, right? But her best customer, if you will, is actually the ISB guy, right?
Yeah.
Lieutenant Corv, right? I had to do some check. I had to go backwards and forwards and go, hang on, is this the same guy? And sure enough, it is. So he's working for the ISB. She's working for the Alliance, as it is in its infinitesimal sort of size. They are more like mortal enemies of each other, and they don't even know it. It's like, how funny is that?
Yeah. It is one of those things that can lead to star-crossed lovers and things like that.
It crossed my mind. I imagine, I mean, you wouldn't have it, but imagine, Cinta and Corv decide to go for a date, and he's like, let's have a bit of a chat. It's like, what are your interests? Well, I'm interested in serving the Empire, and I'm interested in serving the Alliance.
Yeah, stranger things have happened. At least they're setting it up in the background. What I do like about this, you've had characters walking through in the background that are main characters, and you can see they're interacting in the same environment, but they don't actually talk to each other. It happened last week as well, where you saw, I think it was Cinta walking through the background of one of the scenes too.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that's a good setup thing, and maybe a foreshadowing for what happens down the track.
Oh, it's an absolute classic. I mean, it's funny, isn't it? I mean, it's the kind of thing you don't normally expect. The mortal enemies are actually in the same room, and they're completely oblivious as to each other. It's a real Mr. and Mrs. Smith scenario to a large degree. Chrissy said loves Corv's a modified Dia Stalker hat. Yeah, exactly right. There's some really funny stuff coming up later on. All right, so we jump over. So Marva's died, and it just set off this massive chain reaction of all these things, right? So it's big news, right? And of course, there's the discussion about there's going to be a funeral, and everybody's wondering if Cassian is going to turn up to the funeral. Okay. Now, I love this, right? I tell you what, you don't see much of Dedra in this, but she seems to be a pretty unhappy camper. She's a lot more aggressive in this than we've seen previously. And I'm not entirely sure what the reasoning was for it, but I tell you what, she was really, really good. And of course, just to confirm, yes, Corv, our ISD drinking buddy, as I said, there was back in uniform. That's him on the right-hand side. Now, this is, I couldn't help it. You've got to have a laugh, right? You've got to have there's no humor in this show whatsoever, but let's put some humor in. So we learn about the Ferrix burial customs. Marva is going to be turned into a brick, right? And I say, so all in all, you're just another brick in the wall, right? And I thought, well, maybe Dedra just didn't get that joke. She's just not a Pink Floyd fan. She's more of a 70s disco girl.
I actually think she looks like German New Wave to me.
You got to laugh, is it? You become a brick, and because she's asking all these questions. What do? They turn you into a brick, and what happens then? You get stuck in a wall. And I thought straight away, all in all, you're another brick. Oh, absolutely fantastic. So you got to have a laugh, and I thought about it, and because she doesn't laugh, she just says, "Okay, done." She's going to become a brick. I just love it. Maybe she. So Marvin turns into a brick, which then goes through a shop window for a place she couldn't have, somewhere on Coruscant, to steal some stuff out of Luthen's shop. Oh, yes. Loved it. Absolutely
Even
fantastic.
As a brick, she continues to aid the rebellion.
Yeah, totally agree with you. And I love Dedra's body language from Tracy. I do too. Clearly, she is not happy about something, and it's probably to do with the whole Anto-Krieger thing and Lonnie from last week sticking his beak in. So she's on the warpath at the moment. And I do like the fact she's allow the permits, allow the funeral to take place, be there, da-da-da-da-da. And they're all going, as he actually said, the guy actually says, as you wish, straight out of good old Vader. So if you're going to do the thing of getting Marva as a brick and chuck it through a shop window, well, you're kind of going to have to, because apparently at Luthen's shop, the doors are closed, right? And I thought it's one of two reasons, either because Claire was, out the back, as it were, a long way from the front door, and she locked the front doors, or the store is the kind of place you can only visit by appointment only. But either way, you can't just passing traffic, based on what we saw here, right? They're not welcome. No local street kids are going to be busting into that place. What do you reckon?
I kind of got the idea it's so exclusive you have to have an appointment, because it kind of has, you can only get in from the landing platform outside, and when you've seen the cars turn up, there only seems to be room for about one car to land on the landing platform. So I think it's just a very exclusive boutique level shop.
Now, this is a good comment. So Christy has mentioned about Dedra. Look at the bags under Dedra's eyes get bigger each episode, right? And if you look at that, I agree with that. And that's, remember, we saw episodes ago, Dedra was popping them pills, okay?
Yeah.
Stimulants, whatever. And maybe that's what's happening. So as she's losing sleep, getting more stressed, frustrated as well because things aren't going her way with the bits of the mission and thing. Maybe she's just completely going a bit troppo, like really getting aggro. So maybe that has something to do. That's a good observation, Christy. Well done. So yeah, loved it. So maybe that's true.
Or maybe
the pill bottle's empty, huh?
Maybe Cyril Khan just won't stop texting her.
See, after the last time that she ran into him, you reckon every time she's walking to work, she's just looking around. It's like, is he there? Is he there? He's like, you see the dude, the old thing of holding the newspaper with the face on the front with the eyes cut out, and he's.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Absolutely love it. Mm. All right, so we're back in the store. Okay, Val and Claire. This is what I'm talking about. Two alpha females talking to each other. She's got news for Luther. Once again, Marva's carked it. It's the biggest news of the entire thing. Forget about Aldani. This is what's going on, right? And I love the fact that they're like really sort of like banging heads against each other. And Val says, I love this line, right? I gave him Aldani. What have you done lately? And Claire just comes straight back and says, I don't have lately. I have always. And I thought, oh, slap down. Cop that if you don't mind, umpire.
Well, that's one of those things. I think the writing is absolutely great. And we've seen in the series just be how the different rebel cells talk to each other. They share very, very little information anyway. So it's not like they're just going to go, well, I've done this and I've done that, because they just all pretend that they're not involved with everything.
Yeah, so Claire is clearly like Luthen. They are absolute hardcore 100% like in the zone for being supporting the alliance, right? And the way it's discussed later on, when she says to Luthen, are you coming home? You'd almost think that like they got a bit more of a connection to each other. But that is an amazing thing to say, oh, well, I did this recently. And Claire said, well, I've been this since the beginning and I'm still in it now. I thought it was really, really good. It's a real moment to say, when you're a freedom fighter, as it were, fighting against the corruption of the government and whatever else, it isn't just something that happens for a couple of days. It will be take over your life. And I thought that was a really interesting sort of moment. So anyway, the news. So go on.
I think you're absolutely right. And you can see through the characters in this, anyone who's touched by the rebellion, it takes over their life in totally different ways. So you've had Cassian, who's spewed over because he did the job one way, and you've had Mon Mothma, whose financial life is shot because of the rebellion, and you've had these people who are more fanatics rather than working. They're sort of, it is their life being part of the rebellion. So it affects different people in different ways, which is why the dynamic of this show is so interesting.
Exactly right. So as we find out, like Val's heading off to Ferrix for the funeral. So everybody's going to Ferrix. So it's going to be complete like congregation of just about everybody. Daniel's mate says about leaving the front doors locked. It complete sense that the shop has the front door locked because of what Luthen is up to, and you wouldn't want anyone just walking in and hearing sensitive information. That makes complete sense, actually. So he set it up to say, what do you call it? It's by appointment only, right? People walking past just can't get in. For that very reason. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Okay. So, yep, cool. So as we said, like Val said, she's nicking off to Ferrix because Marva's carked it and all that, passing information on Luthen. And as we see a lot in this show, people on their own. And once again, Claire is just on her own. I mean, she was on her own before Val turned up, but it's just like echoing what we saw with Mon Mothma a couple of episodes ago. On your own, there's just no one around, and it really does promote the whole loneliness thing in a person's life, and especially with Claire because she is so focused on her mission. So I thought that was a very interesting shot. They don't have to show things like this, but they do, and I think you get a fair bit out of it. So she just accepts her lot in life, and it's the way it goes.
Well, you would appreciate the shot being a filmmaker yourself, where they do take enough time in this. It isn't like fastly cut, where you will see someone is very alone, and it often is done like this, where they are very small in the scene, and you get a big vista of them with no one else and nothing happening in the scene, and they hold it, which actually makes the audience realize how alone they are, even if it's only subconsciously.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And there's a lot of beautiful imagery in this show. It's like there's a lot of time and effort put into just how things look. And I agree with you. You don't need to have Val walking out and Claire's just there by herself. You could easily just cut straight to Claire and just move on. But you're right, they hang on to those shots intentionally just for the audience to go, oh, I can relate to this because I saw this earlier with Mon. Mon's effectively on her own. Claire's on her own. Everybody's on their own. It's actually a very depressing show. I was thinking about it earlier. I was thinking, there's no laughter, there's no fun, there's no humor, there's just nothing. It is just misery for no one's happy. It's like, oh God.
Have you noticed as well? They've pretty much avoided the Star Wars looks fantastic, neon lights everywhere, and all these colourful shots. Even on Coruscant, it's grey and steely. It's really imperial.
I like this. Clearly, Daniel wasn't watching last week. Another reference to the shot was Padme's head face. Yeah, well, way ahead of you, dude. We showed that last week. You've got to watch our episodes more often. So don't just jump in every 2 or 3 episodes. Watch every single one because we really highlighted that last week. So
what we didn't bring up last week, does that mean that Luthen had some relationship with Padme and the rebellion going back to that far, and that's how he ended up with the headpiece?
No. That's the prop department just saying, chuck this thing in. It's good for the fans. They'll go, oh my God, Easter egg. Oh God, I'm losing my mind. Because if you're trying to draw those bows, you look at all the stuff in the shop and you go, well, hang on, does that mean that Luthen had a connection to the Gungans because you've got a Gungan shield there? And of course, we don't explain how the Jedi and Sith holocrons end up in the back room. So
do you know what? Luthen was a thuggy from Temple.
You're an idiot. Oh yeah, because he's got the Shankara stone. So yes. Anyway. Very, very cool. I like this. Colin Parkin, art imitating life. Most retail stores are empty, but except your shop, Aaron. Well, yeah, well, exactly right. So, very, very good. Here we go. Here we go. Door theory. We've got theories about doors. Have we? What about the random turning up to tell them about the heist? No. Hang on. Whoop, stop there. In that episode, there were 2 people. One person sitting on the chair, which is probably the husband, and the wife was buying something from Claire. And that's where that. Remember, he said to the lady, don't worry about if you can't read the language, make up your own language. So it was actually a couple already in there, dude. So
yeah. I was thinking maybe on the weekends they're open to everyone. That's why, like, there was a few people when the heist happened talking about it, and he went out the back and had a laugh. But the rest of the weekdays, it's by appointment.
Yeah. No, you're right. But yeah, there were a couple in the store, and assuming it was the husband sitting down reading the newspaper while the missus was giving the credit card a bit of a workout. All right, so just to reconfirm what's going on, back to Ferrix again. As we said, okay, so this is Corv, okay, and I love it. It's a galaxy far, far away version of Norm from Cheers, or Morn, if you like Star Trek Deep Space Nine. I thought that was kind of funny. He's just sitting there with his drink, watching what's going on. And I absolutely love this, right? It's the ultimate gag, right? So this is Marva's house looking at the front door. Everybody's watching the house, right? Now, of course, Cinta must be thinking, why is this Corv guy just hanging around every day of the week? And how lucky is it that there's a cafe right across the road?
It's a Starbucks. They pop up everywhere.
What if, now just putting a bit of a sort of a dodgy side of it, what if it was the brothel across the road? It's like, how would you sort of staff that and keep an eye on what was going on?
I don't know. The Twilix.
Don't answer that. It was good fun, though. But yes, how about that? Right across the road from Marva's, there's a cafe, and Cindy gets a job there, so she can keep watching the front door, and Corv's in there doing his thing. You think at some point she's going to be going, no, dude, what are you doing sitting here like hour after hour after hour? So,
yeah.
And always wants his favorite seat so he can see the front door. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's like you said, it's like Deep Space Nine and Cheers, where you've always got the regulars that are sitting at the same place every single time you go into the bar.
Yeah, so Cinta will say, it is like Cheers because everybody knows your name. I was like, I know this dude's name. Very, very cool. Anyway, we're just making a bit of a gag out of it. So Ferrix's Big Ben returns, which I thought was kind of cool. The guy banging his bloody thing, which is kind of groovy. And this is nighttime now, and I thought it's an interesting sort of act of symbolism because I think it's Brasso. I've got to check this guy's name. It's pissing me off. Give me a second. I think I'm on the next screen. Brasso. I was right the first time. Thank you. The whole thing of like Marva's died, all the lights go out. And of course, B2's still in his recharging thing, and it's an interesting symbolic moment because, like, dude, all the lights are out. There's nothing. There's no life left here anymore. And I thought this was really interesting because, like, what do you do as the droid? What do you do? And Brasso says he can't leave him there, right? And I thought the whole thing was really, really cool that he's sympathetic to B2's feelings because B2 wanted him to stay for one more night. It's really, really touching stuff to a large degree. It was really, really cool. It's interesting seeing people dealing with effectively inanimate objects and finding a connection to them and the feelings that he has because Brasso obviously had strong connections with Marva and is clearly doesn't want to just walk out and leave B2 there and say, see you later. I've got to go to work in the morning. It was really nice.
It is one of the things I think in all the Star Wars eras that they have done well by making droids emotion. If you take the scene on Hoth where the shield doors close and you get R2 just make a small sound, or you get BB-8 will do the same kind of thing. It is something that, it works really well because I guess kids associate with droids because they're the more spacey things. And by having them as the more sympathetic characters, it's an interesting juxtaposition between the actual feeling living characters and how they're dealing with things too.
Yeah. In fact, it's interesting because there's more sympathy between Brasso and B2 in this episode than there is for many, I think you just mentioned, any of the human characters at all, which I thought was quite interesting. Chrissy said, don't you have a job to get to? Yeah, you can. Now, the funny thing would be, you're right, Brasso said he's got work the next day. You could almost imagine the saga that he lives 5 minutes from work, right? If he stays at Marva's house, he's like 3 hours away from work, using blunt terminology, and he's willing to accept he'll stay the night with the droid, keep him company, and then spend the long commute tomorrow. It was just a nice moment, and it was good to see. It was very good. I mean, a lot of people will sort of see a lot in that, and as you're right, Christy is like once again consoling a child in their reaction. So, yeah. Love it. All right, so we're still on Ferrix, but we go to a different part of Ferrix. First thing we get to see is we get to see some security cameras. I don't know if you saw these on Aldani in the security base, but we get to see them here in the Death Star specials, which I thought was kind of cool. Love it. And we catch up with Bix, and Bix is clearly having a hard day at the office.
Yes.
Yes. What do you reckon, dude?
Well, at least she can manage to drawl still. I mean, she can't even walk straight without help, I don't think. So
No.
It is one of those things you do not want to hear what she heard. And I think it's great that it has been followed through and she isn't all fine the next day. I think I've mentioned it before when the rebels use the Gurgalat or whatever it is.
Oh, Borgullet.
Yeah,
remember,
they say...
It's not the rebels. Hang on, just to clear, it's not the rebels. Saul Guerrera uses
Saul Guerrera. Yeah.
So
that had all the promise when they said, oh, it's going to mess with your mind. You'll never be the same again. And in the next scene, he's back to normal.
But sorry, I'm going to cut you off. We actually discussed that as part of our Rogue One review and said, well, okay, for starters, and you're completely correct, right? But Bodhi Rook wanted to give up the information. That was the pilot from Rogue One, right?
Yeah.
He said, I'm ready to give it to you. You don't need to use Borgullet, right? I know we're getting a bit nerdy here. So he just would have just sucked it out almost straight away. So as opposed to somebody who's trying to hide information and then they've got to rip it out. And that's what screws their head. So just to clarify that. I know I did a massive in-depth look at the whole Rogue One scenario. So,
well, you look at her and you do actually feel she's a broken person now.
Well, you are right. When she's being helped down the corridor, and you go, oh, yeah, and you are right. They could easily have played this many different ways in the show. One, you are right. She just had the thing in her head. She's perfectly okay, running around. It's all good and whatever. But they don't. They say, no. We're going to show you someone who's busted. And it's like from the Bix we saw from a few episodes ago, who was like, hooking up with Tim and obviously having the thing with Cassian and whatever else, to seeing her here. And you go, and of course, they once again make a reference to say that if you don't tell us the information, we're going to bring in Gorst again. It's like, oh, God, what are you going to do? Oh, it's bad shit. It really is. And I applaud them for the fact they showed this. And I imagine some people would probably be a bit upset at seeing this. But the key thing is it brings in Anto Krieger, finally makes an appearance. And, of course, they think this is Access. Now, here's a question for you, right? Now, I don't know if you know this. The actor playing this guy, I just realized I made a note of it at the bottom, actually said that because he's a fat, bald guy, people can get costumed up as him. So there's hope for everybody, effectively.
Well, I think he's really taking some of the credit that the Rancor Keeper gave us fat, bald guys for years and years and years.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if McKeely was bald or not, but you are right. I mean, that was better than nothing, but at least you get to wear proper clothes here. So anyway, I just chucked that in as a bit of a joke. So Anto Krieger appears, and they're trying to think if this is Axis, right? Now, of course, in this situation, what do? They're asking Bix, is this the contact? And of course, we don't see what her answer is. And now this could easily be a setup. This could, the image could be just some dude they've picked out from the front street to test her to see whether she's going to tell the truth and say, no, it's not. Or is she going to crack and just say, yes, it is, even though she actually has no idea who Anto Krieger is. And they just leave it completely ambiguous. What do you think, dude?
Well, you don't even know if she's so broken if she could answer one way or the other at all. That's what I got, because they ask and you don't see. So I guess it's one of those things that leaves it up in the air. But from what I got, I think she's barely there anymore. The light's gone out of her eyes for sure.
Yes, the psychology is scarier than if they showed. Well, that's exactly right. It's the threat of, and that's funnily enough the Tarkin doctrine. You know, you don't need
Yeah.
to destroy things; it's the threat of being able to destroy things. That's what keeps the local systems in line, effectively. And I thought it was interesting because they're asking, "Is it actually?" You're thinking, as if you put yourself in her situation, where you clearly know it's not. Okay, it's not Luthen. What do? Do you just say yes, it is, knowing it could be because she has no idea who they're looking at?
Yeah.
You're going to sacrifice an individual who hasn't done anything, or are they going to know straight away and go, "Nah, you've just told us a porky pie, bring in Gorst." Oh, not good. Jesus. So yes,
That's when he brings in the SETI eels as like the next round of stuff to use.
yeah, that's not good at all. Yes, and very very cool. So you do wonder. All right, so that's we don't see what the answer is, right? I personally think she's going to say yes, it is, right? Because in
Yeah.
the end, she would know that protecting the whole is more important than herself. And she would say, yes, she has no idea who Anto Krieger is and say, yep, that's access, just to put him off the Luthen track. So
Yeah.
unless she's prepared to just say, it's not. And then, of course, that puts the ISP back to square one. Oh, dear. You are right. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the one. It's meant to be the few, or the one. All right, so we get over to Mon Mothma's part of town. Poor old Mon Moth. Just life's getting harder and harder for her. So we're seeing it from Bix's point of view. It's all physical and psychological, screwed in the head. And you go to Mon's side, and it's just all emotional, right? And we get to learn as to what's going on with Lita. She's part of a traditional Chandrillan courtship ritual that she absolutely loves. And I thought all the young girls are all getting involved. And I thought, mate, would this be considered a cult? And she does make a reference to the fact that Lita sought out the elder herself. Now, we don't know if the elder's male or female. We're assuming it's female. What do you reckon? Are they doing the big vow chant and all the rest of it? Oh, dude, how dodgy is that?
It is one of those things. It is interesting. It's another layer where they add some cultural relevance in the Star Wars universe to another race that we haven't seen before. So I love when they do stuff like this. It really gives the whole galaxy a bit more flavor, in my opinion.
Well, it's funny because this is all a complete aside. It has no relevance to the main story whatsoever. But it's just joining all these dots that we've been discussing over these weeks. And we now learn that the double braid, the double Padawan, as I call it, the hair braid, is part of the ritual, right? And all the girls have it. I thought that was interesting. And even Mon says that Lita is completely devoted to this cause. And I found this quite intriguing because what they're trying to say is imagine the scenario in real life where your child, you could be wealthy and have a bit of money and affluent and whatever. Your child is doing something that you actually don't agree with. Now, parents said he's not fussed either way, and it is part of an old tradition. And you're sitting there watching it, knowing that your kid is doing something that you don't agree with, and you know it has repercussions. How bizarre is that? And I tell you what, there's a fair bit to take out of that.
Well, the one thing that I was thinking, maybe I wasn't expecting that, because I thought that she wasn't a traditionalist child. I thought she was more of a headstrong pushing against what her parents wanted her to do, with her, wanting to not be in the different dinners that she's been invited to and not wanting to interact with anyone. So her being more of a like radical traditionalist actually surprised me.
Yeah. Now, Tracy said she may not agree with it, but did it herself. But yeah, Mon can see how it worked for her, and it hasn't worked, right? Her and Perrin don't get along at all. So, and as mentioned, I'm going to get a couple of other comments mentioned here, that it's a tradition that on Chandrila has sort of died out, but on Coruscant is really, really strong. It's part of the latest trend. So it's the old thing of don't follow what happened in my life because clearly it didn't work. And I think Mon's concerned because Lita is so devoted to it probably because all of her friends are. I don't know if it's necessarily the peer group pressure thing, but just have all these young girls who go, yep, we're taking the vows, we're going to get married. You can ask yourself, what do they expect out of the marriage? I mean, if they just say, oh, my vow is to marry you, dude, what happens when that happens? Do they suddenly just become the typical housewife or what? You would think they become subservient. That's my guess. So, but I don't know.
I'm thinking the only reason she wants to do it is because she wants to not be living with her parents anymore. So it's an escape from the oppressive, maybe the expectations, and Mon Mothma has her to go into politics, or her father's expectations, or something like that.
That's a good way of looking at it. You can actually argue and say Leader's gone down this path deliberately to piss Mon off. It's like, well, my mother doesn't really like the whole traditional Chandrilan way of getting married young, so I'll join this group, right? And I'll go full hog, and I'll turn up to all the classes on time and all the rest of it just to give her the shits. That's a good way of looking. That's what you call spite to your mother, isn't it? Ads has said, being a rebel is about Mon. Should be trying to give him up. She also doesn't know if Luthen is prepared to burn him. No, I'm not sure what you're talking about there, Ads. You've kind of lost me there. Mon Mothma is effectively selling her soul by selling her. Well, she's not selling her off at all. A leader's doing this by choice. Okay, so that's the thing. And clearly, Mon doesn't think it's the right way to go. And it's not just her; it's all her friends as well. Yes. And yet we can see how mum and dad's relationship sucks. So, yes. And as we're saying, it's an old tradition. It's sort of dying out on the home planet, but on Coruscant, for whatever reason, it's thriving. Okay. And that's unusual. Probably to do with whoever the elder is. And don't say it's Uncle Harlow, right? But whoever the elder is clearly sucking them all in, and they're doing the double Padawan on the braids, and away we go.
The elder is going to be Babu Frick for sure. I just joke. But have you seen there is another theme running through this series, and this is the relationships with children and their mothers. And you've had it with, I guess, the death and the funeral, and with, it's not his mother, but his adopted mother. And then you've had it with this scene, and you're going to get it soon when we'll talk about Cyril and his mum. So it is one of those interesting dynamics, again, where they're showing different relationships in the Star Wars universe with mothers at, I guess, different society or different social levels, stations in society. So it is one of those. There's a lot of themes happening in this series.
Yeah, you could argue. I've just thought about this now. You could argue that what they're doing is emulating what happens in certain countries of the world with the future of females and where they're going and what they end up doing and all the rest of it. It could be the galaxy far, far away version of that, which leads into this bit. The girls have no ideas other than what they're being taught in these classes, which is where the cult thing comes into it. So I think a lot of the ideas that you see in this series emulate what happens in real life. They just put it in a different context, in a different planet, and different galaxy, but the meanings are exactly the same. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's a bit of parallels going on there. So we finally get down to Val and Mon having a gas bag about Mon's predicament. She explains everything that's been going on. And we do actually get to see traffic in the background. Remember the last episode in the daytime? There was no cars around. Tonight there is. So they only ever come out at night. And the funny thing is, right, so Mon said she was transferring money here, there, and everywhere, doing it all on the shifty. And, of course, it's the Aldani thing that's brought everything to a screeching halt, because all the Imperial advisors have all clamped down on all the financial transactions. And, of course, Vel was the cause of that. But Mon doesn't know this. So imagine that saying, sorry, cuz, I kind of caused all your grief. So how about that?
I did wonder. This was one of my favourite bits in the episode. I really liked the discussion and the different levels of her knowing what was going on and Mon knowing what was going on. And when she said how much she was in debt, it just shows how much she gave to the rebellion, because that was a percentage of the heist they did. I did wonder if she was going to say, well, I've got this money from a job I did, I'm going to give it to you, or something like that, and solve the situation. But that didn't happen. But it was it 300,000 credits she was in debt for? And how much did they steal from the payroll?
100 million.
So that's a drop in the ocean. They should be paying Mon Mothma back.
Yeah, you would think so, eh? So, but clearly she doesn't want to go down that route because it's stolen money. You know, if you can trace the coins, it's the last resort, and she isn't far from the last resort, but heading there. Tracy said she disagrees with what I said, which is fair enough. She's learning the old traditions, albeit warped as they are, and that's exactly right. And I'm saying that it's just echoing what happens here in real life with certain countries. I'm just going to leave it right at that, right? So from an outsider's perspective, which in this case is Val and or Mon looking at it going, well, it is warped, it is cockeyed, even though Mon followed the same path. But they can see, no, just because it's traditional doesn't mean it's right. And Leader's just completely dialed into it, as is her friends. If her friends weren't into it, chances are Leader wouldn't be either, but they're all into it. So, as I said, bordering on the thing of a cult. And of course, then Mon highlights that she turned to Tay, right? Who's now discovered her financial woes. And Mon says, got a solution, which of course is Davo's kid, Marion Davo's kid off to Lita. And I didn't take a screen grab of it, but when Lita goes over to Val and you're looking at Mon's reaction and she's on the verge of letting the waterworks out, I was like, oh, you just want to give her a hug and you go, oh, Jesus, she's just holding it in barely. She's going to go freaking drop her postal before you know it. Oh, dear.
I did wonder when they were showing that the daughter was really into the religion and looking at taking vows and stuff like that. I did wonder if Mon Mothma would go, organize this meeting and then make it look like it was her daughter's idea. And so get out of the problem by doing it without really the hard, you have to meet this guy kind of thing. But hey, you're doing this tradition. If you want to do this tradition, we're meant to meet guys. How about an introduction with this one? And I thought maybe being a diplomat, that might be what happens down the track.
Yeah, I think so too. So it's just bad. Everything's bad. Tracy made a point of saying that she actually did agree with me. I can't put it up because she called me by a swear word. So it's all good. We're all yay team, yay, all good. All right, so the alarm goes off, right? Now, I had to be able to laugh here, right? Did the hairdressing department, they must have a whale of a time with Edie's Can't call. Oh, absolutely love it. Tracy said, I agree that you can really feel monster spit. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Completely. And that's this covers off what we've been saying about this series the whole way along, because it is so long and some things are just there's no rushing to go anywhere. You feel everything that the characters are going through, right? I've actually read people say, oh, the whole Mon Mothma thing has been dragging out. It's as slow as a wet week and it's not going anywhere. And it's like, guys, you're missing the point if that's the case. This is really interesting stuff, because you're seeing she's like trying all these different ways to fix this problem and none of them are working. And while that's going on, she's got a husband who clearly doesn't give a rat's ass about anything. She's got a daughter who wants to marry the first dude who comes along because it's part of the tradition. He's like, and now she's got people who knows that she's been doing dodgy stuff, including shifty dudes who know she's been doing dodgy stuff. It's fantastic. It is, and when you see Mon Mothma again in things like Return of the Jedi and even Rogue One, at least you can say we know your journey now, whereas before we didn't. And there's a lot to be said about that. So yeah.
Well, I was going to say that when you see Mon Mothma's talk in Return of the Jedi, and it's very slow and deliberate. Now you actually know the weight of her that's been on her shoulders for so long when she gives that speech.
Yeah, exactly right. I like that. What swear word? You call me by a name I don't like being called by. But let's move on. It's not an important thing. So I like it. Edie's hair is a throwback to the 60s. I thought it was great. Anyway, so she gets to wake up good old Cyril. And he hasn't decorated his room. He's been here for like at least over a month by now. And there's no posters on the walls, no other action figures.
Do you know what would have been? Do you know what would have been funny? If there was just one picture of Deirdre on the wall or something in like her Imperial, looking like this, like really harsh.
That's going to be in his private box, right? And it's just like I'm going to get in trouble for this. He's gotten a book that folds out and it's just all these pictures of her that he's taken surreptitiously between the newspaper with the eyeballs. He just folds and go, "Holy moly!" Anyway, where are we going with this? So Pearl, Cyril gets a phone call. We've only got this episode and one episode left, and then we're done. So if you're sick of hearing us, then you don't have to last long. Put up with us for very long. Awesome. Good old Linus Mosk returns. How grouse is this? He's still on Molana 1 working in a smelter. And I had to laugh at this, right? It was a really shit-house transmission. And I thought, are people going to be saying, oh, it's a Telstra, it's an Optus, it's the NBN? What do you love it? Loved it. And of course, Cyril gets to find out what's going on with, once again, the news of the world, mate. That's it. Marva carked it, Cassian's mother. How'd you find this sequence, dude?
Well, I thought this was a fantastic sequence too. And you can tell just how obsessed that he has become. And I think the other thing is now he obviously likes Deirdre. It's also a way that he can win her approval as well if he can do this. So it is going to be one of those funny things. I was talking to Chad in the shop and we both have different opinions of what is going to happen. Chad thinks he's going to go and stuff everything up. Like he's going to go and stuff it up. I think Cyril Khan has a hero's journey. I reckon they're going to stuff it up. And just as Cassian thinks he's got away, he's going to run into Cyril Khan and Cyril's going to catch him and be the hero of the day. So they're the two ways I think it could go. What were you thinking about when he got this call?
Yeah, it's an interesting sort of discussion. I love the fact that Linus Mosk, despite the fact that Cyril got him sacked, right, is still willing to call him up and go, "Yeah, dude, how you going? I'm still here fighting the good fight." And I thought that was great. It's characters we haven't seen for like over a month in the series of reappearing, which is really really groovy. Regarding the Dedra pictures, yeah, in Cyril's apartment, yeah, don't check under the mattress. Yeah, exactly. You can make some good jokes about it, but let's move on. And Christy said. There was a mild amount of humor in this, very mild actually. It was almost like non-existent. But the key thing is that the Premors, because Mosk mentions this, the Premors are still in the process of imperial transition. And you can imagine those Premors would not be in a hurry to transition everything off because it's been over a month. You would have thought the Empire would have walked in and just said, "No, it's all us. You guys go. Don't let the door hit you on the way up." And clearly, it's obviously been a bit of time that's taken for that to occur. And even after the phone call, Edie's listening on the phone call, she still continues to talk down to Cyril, right? It's like you almost think she's going to say, "Wait till Uncle Harley is about this," because it's just reopening the old wounds. And clearly, Edie is not happy about it.
No, and she's so controlling. She goes and ruins the phone call for him and ends it, doesn't she?
Oh, she's got a habit of listening in on these calls. I'll tell you what. All right, so we jumped away to somewhere else, and then we came back the next day, right? And we see Edie. Obviously, she works somewhere in Coruscant, so she's a working lady. Cyril's all dressed up to do it, and he just knows, like, dude, don't do it. Whatever you're going to do, don't do it. And he goes inside, and he steals from them. It's like, dude, what are you doing? It's just not going to end well at all. I'll tell you what, Edie's going to go off the deep end. Well, Harlow's going to get a phone call over this one. Who do you reckon? The freaking son stole off her.
I know. I was just thinking, unless this goes monument, I think it has to go well for him. I think he has to have a win by the end of the series because I don't think I could stand seeing his life get worse and worse and worse and worse and then not pay off with something good at the end. But when he was doing this, I'm like, the only way that he can get off of this is he becomes the golden boy of the Empire by doing something great next week.
It's an interesting one because in a normal sort of storyline, that's what would happen. You have this massive blow, everybody thinks you're complete garbage, and then all of a sudden you become the hero, and everybody just realizes, oh, you're actually cooler than I thought. But this show is so unpredictable in a lot of ways. You can't necessarily guarantee that, right? And you are right, it's the hero's journey, but maybe he's not the hero. So I don't know. I just don't know. I seriously don't. What's so good about it?
So it is an interesting show when even the people who are Imperial on the bad side, I want things to go well for them. I want Dedra to advance. I think she's a great character. I want Cyril to redeem himself as much as I want, Cassian to win as well. So it is good when the villains are just as likable as the heroes.
I totally agree with you on that. And yes, it's almost like you're following all these stories at the same time, and they can't all win. Somebody has to lose. You're not entirely sure who that'll be. But if Cyril does end up sort of tripping over his own feet and falling on his face, it'll be his own fault in the end because he was given a good job. It was boring as it was, but stealing from your mother. All right, I had to laugh at this. Right, we get back to Neamos, whatever it is, and I cack myself. So more galaxy far, far away wildlife. So we went from goats with a shitload of horns to blue pelicans. Oh, dude, what's the deal with that? Well, they spray paint them or something, did they? Oh my God, blue pelicans! Bloody hell.
In the mix afterwards, they go, do you know what? Let's make them blue or something. But I mean, that's fine. I mean, it makes them a bit more exotic than just normal ones, doesn't it?
No, it doesn't. They just spray painted them freaking blue. It's like, is it the budget cuts? They said, no, we can't get artificial. We had aliens at the start of the show. That was the end of our alien budget. Blue pelicans. Oh, freaking hell. I had to laugh at that. And I thought, I can't wait to show that slide. Now, where is everybody? I mean, is it like winter season or something? Or are they all been arrested? Have the shore troopers come along and actually done something useful and arrested everybody? I did find it interesting that, yes, I agree with Colin. Yeah, pink elephants will be next. Well, we've seen blue ones. So I hope the dye is water soluble. Unbelievable. They didn't even CG on an extra bit, it's just exactly just painted them blue. It's like, oh my God, seriously?
Well, we've had goats with extra pairs of horns, and now we've had like bin turkeys that have been painted blue.
Geez, imagine, eh? It's like they brought the pelicans to the set and say, you can't use real ones. Well, you can use real ones, but they're boring. Can we spray paint them in different guns? Done. They're aliens. Oh, I loved it. I had to laugh. That was a funny moment, even though it wasn't meant to be funny. All right. So we get back. gets out of the water. Very good. So when the pelicans dive in for the fish, they come out white and the water turns blue. Love it. Very good. You need a lot of pelicans to turn their water blue.
They're not dags. They're not fish. They're wigglers. Sorry.
Squigglies, mate. Squigglies. Love our
Squigglies.
squigglies. And don't forget, there's always a bigger squiggly. So we ended up back in Cassian's room, right? Now, of course, this is an interesting one. This could be a bit of a stretch of reality, right? He's been gone for over a month, if not a month and a half, right? And his suitcase is still there. Now, someone else is sleeping in the room, so obviously he didn't own it. He was like a hotel room or something. Would that be the case? That's probably stretching. And now, of course, from a narrative perspective, if they said he turns up and the case is missing, then we've got a whole other story as to where it is, who's got it, and he's got to find it. And maybe from the writer's perspective, they said, "Now, stuff it, stick the case back up there. We just need to move on, right? We can't have these sagas." But I mean, the chances of him walking back in going, "Oh my God, it's still here," after a month, I don't know. That's probably about one of the weakest or the dumbest moments in the show. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I thought about that too. I thought about, if I went into a room on a hotel somewhere and there was another case there, the first thing I'd do is ring the management and say, "Oh, someone's left their case here."
Well, that's right. And you'd think the cleaners at some point would go up there. Now, let's assume that there are droids who clean it. And it's just like, well, after people leave, they, who knows, they might have had their own version of COVID, sort of like outbreaks, and they've got to do the deep clean and whatever. So the fact the case is still there, I don't know. I mean, it's possible that Cassian hired the room for over a month, 2 months, whatever, and it's his room and they haven't touched it, and whoever's sleeping in his bed is just a squatter. It's possible. But it did seem a bit coincidental that he walked into the room, there it is. So anyway.
Tracy says, "How often do you look on top of things like nightclubs and stuff?" Tracy, you're not married to a Tennille who the first thing she does in a hotel room is go and run her finger over everything to make sure there's no dirt or dust or anything, and she would have found that straight away.
And I agree with Christy. As a cleaner, you would, because you don't want.
Yeah.
It's not a good look. I mean, you would clean everything because you don't want your guests finding shit in place. Man, you've got rats up there or whatever. It wouldn't be a good thing at all. It was hidden above the shower. I know, but I'm still. It's no big deal. I mean, the case is there. We would just move on. But I mean, it was probably stretching credibility just a little bit. Very, very good. Well, there is that too. Had it hid well. Slack cleaners. Yeah, you never know. Very good. Yes, white gloves. Anyway. We get to the case, we open it up, we get to see all the money. So you get all the golds on the left, the bronzes and the silvers. And I thought that was kind of cool. You get to see different colored credits and you get to see Blade Runner gun. So you have to assume that equals, because he took 30,000, if I recall. And he's obviously spent a bit since then. So I thought it was just nice to sort of see what hard currency looks like. Yes. Colin said, was it a motel? We don't know. It's a resort that he's on. And as I said, if he had the room booked for a period of time, maybe nobody went in there afterwards. I don't know. It doesn't matter.
Well, look, the thing is, Sully might be right. Obviously, the suitcases with his clothes in were gone, and the one that was hidden with the money in was still there. So it might just have been well enough hidden to just avoid the cleaners and stuff.
Yeah. Or you're right. He has a room for a long period of time and he tells the cleaner, don't clean above the shower. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Not important. So we got to see I just thought it was good. Good to see all the credits. That's very good. Hard currency, as we said. It's not exactly like carrying cash. So if you had like $50 in credits, it's like carrying coins for us, which is an absolute nuisance. So it is interesting that it's not like paper, Star Wars paper, as it were. So, not important. One thing we haven't seen for ages is Karras's manifesto. Remember from way back then? It's the Kindle version. So he wasn't physically writing with a pen, and it's not a book with paper in it, even though it looked like one. It's the Kindle version. So good old, remember that, Karras's manifesto from way back when? Who's now long since departed us. And I suspect at some point Cassian will read that, and that will be another reason why he joins the Alliance. But what do you reckon?
Yeah, again, we've talked about it before. I do like how it's not all super futuristic holograms jumping out of screen technology. It's very realistic Star Wars and New Hope era sort of technology.
Yep, which just fits in beautifully with the existing environment. So we chuff off back to Segura Milo. Remember, Luthen's missing, right? Vel was looking for him earlier. Where is he? And he's catching up with Saw Gerrera again. And this was a fantastic moment, right? Because the truth all comes out about what's going to happen with Anto. Because as we saw, Saw is ready and rocking and rolling to go to Spellhouse and help Anto Krieger and all this sort of thing. Done a complete 180, a total about face. And then Luthen tells him what's going on. Now, you notice we've dropped from 50 dudes down to 30 dudes. So 20 dudes got sacked in the process. Yep. Not entirely sure how that happened there in the story. But he now knows, as in Saw Gerrera now knows what's going on. and that the ISB is aware of it. And all that does is just fuel his paranoia. What do you reckon there, dude? And because some of the things that he suggests are correct, you're protecting somebody, but he doesn't know that. You're protecting somebody in the ISB. It was a great moment. And Luthen's just trying to reel the poor bastard in and is like, dude, just settle down. I'm trying to see what's going on here. Oh, tell you what, absolutely fantastic.
It was another great scene. I did think maybe it dropped from 50 to 30 because now they know it's going to be a trap. They want to lose as less people as possible. So they've doing it with a skeleton crew.
Nobody knows. Luthen knows. Lonnie knows, and everybody knows nothing's going to happen. They're just going to let them go for it and see what happens. So 20 dudes. It might have been a writing error, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I thought because Luthen knew, he might have said do it with 30 instead of 50.
I mean, nothing worse if you try and you contact the 20 dudes and say, now maybe you remember we discussed this last time. We said that they've said 50 men, and we said, well, what if they're not all men? What if you got women and kids and mothers and fathers and whatever? You're right. If he puts a phone call through, go, it's not even his operation. It's Anto Krieger's operation. So he can't just ring up and tell 20 people to bugger off because 30 dudes are going to turn and go, where are the other 20? Oh, they've decided to chuck a sickie because they know something we don't. This is cool. So I like this, right? So Luthen is trying to make all the right decisions, and it's important. He's deliberately allowing Anto to get pinged because he, as in Luthen, can't be identified, right? And that's the key thing. Even Saul Gerrera says, would you have let it happen to him? And he says, no, because you know who I am. So Luthen has taken it from the point of view of saying, I'm ready to let Anto go and his 30 dudes, right? Because Anto, even if he gets captured, doesn't know who Luthen is. That's an amazingly self-centered point of view, isn't it? And as we see, like with Saul Gerrera, ever the paranoid, and he doesn't know what to believe, and he's seeing traitors everywhere. What do you reckon?
Well, like I said last week, I think he is playing chess and he considers himself the king and he just moves pieces around. And this is one of those occasions where he has to protect himself because if he goes under, he knows the whole network will go down.
Yes, you can imagine poor Luthen being given the old Gorst headphone treatment. The man of beans he could spill is amazing. And I like it just out of nowhere, he dubs Tubes in, right? He says, oh, it's Tubes is my contact. I go, what? That was a funny moment. And he made it convincing. The way Luthen says, yeah, I've been feeding him information for ages. And the Tubes go, whoa, whoa, whoa. That was really, really clever, actually. Really clever. And in the end, it's all just to say that, Saw has to let it go. Has to let Anto and his 30/50 dudes drop because so they can all connect for the greater good, as it were, even if Luthen doesn't agree with the term the greater good because it's not the greater good. They've just got to let it happen.
You can understand how Saw Gerrera got to the point he was in Rogue One where doesn't trust anyone, doesn't work with anyone because even in the rebellion or the proto-rebellion, people don't let each other know what's happening and they screw each other over and you can't trust anyone.
Which is funny because when the numbers are so low, there's so few of them around anyway. And like you've got all these different groups, all these different cells, and they're going to lose one whole cell, Anto Krieger and his troops, and who knows what other connections Anto's got. And they're just going to let him go because they know later on the benefits from it. And, of course, we know that that's the case. But that's a hell of a lot to give up. It's like, as Luthen says, what do you do? If they change the mission parameters and tell Anto what's going on, the ISB is going to get wind of what's going on, and that just ruins everything. So they've kind of got to let it happen. Now, this would be equivalent to what happened in real life, I think, in World War II, where certain missions were allowed from the enemy, were allowed to continue on because had they been thwarted, the Germans or whoever would have realized, oh, hang on, they're aware of our communication techniques, and then, the beans are spilled, so to speak. So the story goes. So, yes, the bigger picture, as they say. There's always a bigger picture. So Luthen is nicking off from the planet, right? And Claire and he are having a good conversation. And the cryptic talk, I've got to admit, it was so cryptic, even I wasn't 100% sure of what they were talking about. About possessions and trying to find things and buy things. And I didn't completely follow it. I understand why they did it, but it kind of lost me. Were you completely on top of what was going on here?
Yeah, I think I was. But like you said, they have to be really, really careful because if anyone hears one wrong thing and they're in getting the, I guess the mind probe treatment or something like that. So, it was pretty cryptic, but I did follow the scene.
Yeah. And of course, we lose communication. And of course, we get this beautiful imagery, right? Absolutely stunning of in the upper atmosphere. Now, it's an arrestor cruiser. That's the name of the ship. And they've actually listed as a Cantwell class. And, of course, that's actually the guy who designed it originally for A New Hope back in 1977. And it never got used. It does appear in Solo in the recruitment video that you see there. But it finally got to make its big appearance here. And this was an interesting moment because you're thinking, okay, so what's going to happen? Remembering from the Imperials' perspective, they don't see a lot of shifty stuff going on. That in the next few years, it's going to build up. But at the moment, for the most part, you could be in these guys flying around the ship for years and just thinking, mate, life's grouse. Not much is happening. And, of course, Saw Gerrera's on the planet below them. So clearly they have to mind their P's and Q's whenever they're leaving the planet. But the key thing is it actually confirms that Luthen doesn't panic, right? He's completely, it's a difficult situation. He's cool with it. He knows what he needs to do. He's got the advanced ship, right? So it's called the Fondor, which kind of throws me off. It's a Fondor hauling craft because Fondor is actually a planet where they build Star Destroyers. Kind of throws me off sometimes. But I do like the fact that he's got all this stuff prepared to go. And so you do wonder if he's been in these situations before, but he clearly didn't panic. And I thought that was kind of cool.
I thought it was a great scene. I thought it looked great. One of the first sort of big space battle. It wasn't a battle, but space confrontations they've had in the series. And again, it looked like Star Wars, but again, it looked unique as well. It wasn't something we've seen exactly before. Like you said, the ship was named, but not really been in it before. And Luthen does keep his cool, but he also gives a bit of, hold on, hold off, give me some more time. And I do wonder if he hadn't have done that, they would have just let him go because it seemed that it annoyed the captain of the ship. And when they go, oh, it all checks out. And he's like, well, we're going to check him anyway. And I do wonder if he'd been quicker, they'd have just let him go.
Yeah, you do wonder, because then you're right, he kind of irked them a bit and they said, no, we'll do the boarding party as part of our training. It's been a while. Yeah. You do wonder if he could have just said, no, here's my thing. I'm good to go. All right, so I love this one. I love the countermeasures, mate. I tell you what, awesome visual effect. Who needs laser beams? Just chuck stones, just chuck shit at it, and it'll bust up. What a freaking awesome bit this one.
What I loved even more was the Imperials were so shocked. They were like, this doesn't happen. This isn't meant to happen. I thought it was great.
Oh, absolutely fantastic. And when the guns pop up and they're shooting all these bullet things, and you're right, you would be shocked because you don't normally see resistance. You don't see people fighting back. And I think it was fantastic. Ed's thing, it looks. I thought the ties looked a bit C2G CGI. Well, that's going to happen on occasions. And reminds me of Darth when he was disappointed on the bridge. Well, exactly right. And the thing is, finally, right now, I wanted to highlight this for all those friggin' whinging complainers, right? You wanted a freaking lightsaber. It's not exactly a lightsaber, but it's not far from it. Stop your bloody complaining.
It's a double ender as well.
And it spins around, right? It does an Inquisitor, right? Goes around. How good is that? Hey?
Yeah, it is one of those things I wonder, well, if this was like the normal thing on a ship, why don't they have it more in battles against, just go and run along a Star Destroyer and stuff like that?
But it's not standard, right? So Luthen's ship has been highly modified, and he's got the AI guy thing, and he's got the countermeasures. So he's clearly tricked it up, ready for these sort of events. Now, of course, it's a bit wanky, right? He's got this laser beam that spins around. I mean, what are the chances if the TIE fighters flew in a different direction? They could easily have just shot him down, but they didn't. I mean, from the TIE fighters' perspective, they would not have been expecting this at all because it's just a hauling craft, right? They're not expecting all these weapons to pop up. So, and you are right, Shane. And it was red too, a red laser beam. So I just thought it was good. It's finally, there you go. It's not a lightsaber, but it looks like a lightsaber. So shut up, everybody. Oh, freaking people complain. Oh, where are the laser beams? Where's the Grogu's? Where are the aliens? Oh. Freaking Star Wars fans, they shit me.
Where's Lola? Where's Lola?
Yeah, exactly right. I love it. Yeah, tricked them into cranking up the tractor beam for maximum impact of the dish. So yes, because we've seen so much of Star Wars over the past 45 years, it's easy for us, the audience, to go, oh yeah, why didn't the Imperials do this? Why didn't the Imperials do that? But you've got to look at it from their perspective, right? This is all new to them. They don't have this sort of stuff happening. So it would have completely thrown them off kilter. And that's the reason why you get this last bit. And you got that dude's going, oh, as you said, I did not see this coming. Oh, I'm completely at a loss. With a bit of luck, they'll have at least got a good picture of the ship, send it to the ISB and go, you wouldn't believe what just happened here. And then they start joining the dots. It goes to Dedra, Dedra says, well, this guy who's got this really tricked up Fondor hauler thing, right? What was he doing out on Segra Minor? Who was he seeing? Where's he going? And that could be the beginning of Luthen's downfall, because prior to all this occurring, nobody even knew Luthen existed. But since the start of the series, they now, or they call him Axis, they now do. So he's more at a threat of being exposed now than he was before the series started. And that could be the bit that starts it all off. Because as we saw with Dedra, she's joined all these dots over this entire series to get to where we are now. She just needs to add in another piece. Who is Access? Well, believe it or not, we've got this funky ship doing this stuff. Let's go with that.
Wasn't that a great shot too, where you've got the reflection of the damage to the ship with him overviewing it, looking disgusted. But the really great thing is just the two stormtroopers in the background that like don't break a sweat. They just stand there the whole scene, which I think is great. Can you imagine when they knock off, they go back and go, "The captain's really screwed over that one, isn't he?"
So they go down to the chow area, to have some food, and they go, "You see that?" And you go, "Mate, didn't shit go down?" You can have some great conversations. There's like, "Oh, mate, shit was going down outside," and then one goes, "That was freaking awesome," but I couldn't say anything.
Well, that's probably the first exciting thing that's ever happened to them on that ship in all their patrols.
You could have a little great moment where they just see, yeah, you're right. They're getting their soup in the dinner line on the trays and all that. So it's like, did you see that? It's like one guy's went, I almost went, yay, and I thought, no.
And ads is absolutely right. It's the image of someone in big trouble.
Yes, exactly right. Which, of course, he wasn't, because they didn't do anything wrong. I love it. And you are right. You get to see some freaking laser beams. Absolutely loved it. Very, very cool. And yes, so let's see if that triggers anything. I mean, they could have just put it in as a special effects sequence for the sake of one, but I don't think so. As we've said in this series, very rarely does something get put in for the sake of it. Everything means something. And I wouldn't be surprised if that has a lot to do with it. So, yes, very, very good. All right, so we finally get back to what's going on with Cassian after all this time. And I love it, as we said once before in one of the first, in fact, the first episode, phone boxes. There are still phone boxes in the galaxy far, far away. Absolutely love that. So Melshi and Cassian are obviously on Nemus, whatever it's pronounced. And, of course, now Cassian really is alone because Marva's died. And I've got to say, that would be hard because she didn't even know she was, he didn't even know she was sick. So all this has occurred while he's been in prison, incarcerated. And, a tough moment.
Yeah, I thought it was a good moment. And again, where they were just with the phone boxes and no one around highlighted like how alone he is at the moment.
Yeah, Greg's mentioned about the stormtroopers not coming back, ever having witnessed. No, it hasn't got to that stage yet. Okay, so it's just a random incident, but it's going to be an important incident in the scheme of things. But the guys on the ship, don't know that as yet. We all know how the Empire deals with failure. Well, yes, don't know, but it's not somebody important as yet. So I think don't read too much into it at this stage. I think Marva has left something for Cassian and B2. Could be, actually. That's definitely a good point. You would think the daughters of Ferrix are aware of what Marva was up to, because remember, Marva was doing all this like self-rebel alliance stuff, if you will. They would be aware of that, so it wouldn't surprise me at all. And Christy agrees, expecting to see that. Importantly, Melchi asked, how many people escaped from Narkina 5? And then was it just these two? Out of 5,000 people, only 2 potentially got away, these 2 guys. Now, you would think mathematically that would be unlikely. So you remember the big escape sequence, not everybody made it off. We know that. Not everybody could swim or swim properly. All the guys landing on top of each other when they landed in the water, you'd be losing a whole, and guys who just couldn't swim to the shore, and whoever got captured afterwards. That's a lot. So if it's just 2, remember, this is the mindset. Narkina was the equivalent of Alcatraz, right? So you got Alcatraz Island, you can see San Francisco just across the way, but if you end up just trying to swim there, doesn't mean you're going to jump in the drink and away you go. It doesn't mean you've got freedom by default. So if it is just these 2.
It reminded me of the movie The Great Escape, where a whole lot of prisoners get out at the same time, and when it gets to the end of the movie and they're like, how many got away and how many came back, they're saying, well, there was 47 shot, and they're like, how many wounded? They're like, none. They killed them all, kind of thing. And I think that would happen to any of the prisoners that were found out of this. The Empire ain't going to take them back to the prison. They're just going to be shot on sight. So we don't really know, but I think the chances are pretty low for anyone else to be out there still.
Yeah, I would think they would use the mindset of what they did for the Tanty 4 in A New Hope, saying there's been like an accident and all aboard were killed. You're right.
Yeah.
Oh, something blew up in the prison. Everybody carked it. Both the troopers, the guards, as well as the prisoners. Too bad, so sad. We just move on. File it away in a report somewhere. And yeah, exactly right, because you don't want to have all that exposed. I like this one from Adzi. That would be cool as B2 having a message for Marva, from Marva to Cassian. And there's a message that makes him join the Alliance. There's a lot of things pointing him in the right direction. And I think that could actually be the case. So she was engaging in rebel activities. He's got Ferrick's manifesto. And yeah, Marva's words could be enough to make it all happen. So the question we don't know is whether he's going to nick off to Ferrick's and go to the funeral along with everybody else who's there at the moment. It's going to be the biggest cast party in the entire universe. And we'll have to see what happens. But in the interim, in our last shot here, it's the symbolism of this moment because he's on a beach all on his own because Melchi's already left. And of course, Cassian will die on a beach 5 years from now. So,
what you say about the funeral is interesting too, because we hear in this episode about imperial bureaucracy where she's like, well, let them do the funeral with limited numbers. And I thought, well, that's fantastic because it means everyone who's there is a key cast member and they don't have to pay for any extras.
Exactly right. Now, that's the end of my slide. So, Christy, when you get a moment, can you give me your crimson yawns on the episode, please? The more yawns, the worse it was. The less yawns, the better it was. Tracy said she liked how we saw almost all the characters with a determined path ahead. They do. And all of them, it's just miserable. There's just nobody heading for some bright lights at all. It's just, yes. And if it does turn out that Cassian does go to Ferrick's, which you don't know if he will or not. I'm not entirely sure if he will because he's got no real need to go back there unless he does want to go to the funeral. But nobody's aware that the others are all watching, right? So Cinta's not aware that Corva's watching. Corva's not aware of her. Val's going to be turning up, catching up with Cinta. Imagine they end up in the bar together and Corva goes, "Oi, who's this?" Oh, my God. And both of them were involved with the Aldani heist. And it's like, it's almost a comedy of errors to a large degree. So you do wonder what the deal will be. So
I think he does have to go to the funeral because all of the other people who are the major players are going there, and that's the finale of the series. So I think it'll all go down at the funeral.
Very good. Now, Chrissy's gone for the 4 yawns, so that's the equivalent of 6 out of 10. So that's actually one of her highest scores for the episode, which is absolutely fantastic. And she's asked how many episodes left? 1. Next week is the finale. Okay, so very, very cool. Now, before we get on to the next bit of our discussion, now, do you want to talk about what's happening for our viewers, Mr. Aaron?
Yep. So we've had different people suggest we do a live event or we do a catch up in somewhere or something. And we've decided we are going to do that. And it's just a get together dinner for the end of the year. And we've decided we're just going to book some tables at the Matthew Flinders Hotel, which is in Chadstone on Warrigal Road. And it's Saturday, the 17th of December. And we're going to be there aiming to get there 7-ish, I think, aren't we, Dags?
Yep.
And pretty much anyone who wants to come, you're welcome to come. You just have to let us know because it's that time of the year where Christmas parties are happening and we do have to book a table. So if you are interested in coming and talking about Star Wars and talking about anything really, it's a good time to catch up with us and catch up with everyone else who you see making comments on the different shows we do.
Very good. And we're doing all right. We're nearly at 20 people already. So it's like wall-to-wall nerds. Be a lot of good stuff to discuss, and it should be a good night. Now, Mr. Aaron, what did you think of A Daughter of Ferrick's?
I think it was another highly entertaining, good episode that makes you think, and it's done really well in leading into the finale as well. Because when it ended, I was like, no, I kind of wanted the episode to keep going. So again, I give it an 8 out of 10. I thought it was really good.
I enjoyed it all, but I didn't like the alien stuff at the start. I found that was a little bit that jarred, and it didn't work for me, and a little bit wanky, and it was almost a bit unnecessary. So, but the rest of it was really groovy. Even though once again it's just a big talk fest, aside from Luthen's big spaceship scene at the end. So I was actually going to go at 8 as well, 7, 8, because that alien thing was kind of annoying. But the rest of it, as you said, all the pieces are in play now, It's all going to happen. And it's one of those things, I think if you ask all these people, what do you think is going to happen next week? You'll end up with a dozen different answers. Because you just don't know. All we know is that Cassian will survive. That much we do know, right? And Melchi will survive. That much we do know. The rest is completely up in the air. And that's a great way to be. And
I like what Tracy said about all the characters being on a path. What I have liked, there isn't my most favorite characters on this. When they go to any of the characters' storylines, I think they're all good, and it's all strong storylines. So that's been really interesting, because sometimes when you have such a large cast and they're all got different story arcs, some are favorites and some you go, oh, can't wait for this to go over so we can get back to Cyril. But all of the different threads and plot threads are working really well for me.
Totally agree. Look at this. We're already starting to think of ahead. And Chrissy's asking if we're going to just start reviewing Willow. We haven't thought that far ahead. We've been at this for nearly 2 months now, 12 episodes straight. It's a bit draining, but it's all good. Yes, a true ensemble cast, and it is. And because of the show is so long, it has allowed for that to occur. Yes, I think the only character we sort of lost along the way, who we don't know what happened to, is Blevin, the Imperial Security Bureau guy from way back when, who got the arse after Dedra sort of showed him up. He's Gonskis, and the rest we don't know. And it's kind of good that we don't necessarily know the fates of characters who've gone, because in real life you wouldn't know. Right? You're saying, I was dealing with this person, I've gone left, they've gone right. What happened to them is anybody's guess, like we're using talking about Kino on in the prison, for example. So very, very good. I like this one. It's conflicted. Do I watch Andor or rip it off the card this Wednesday evening? Definitely watch Andor, because I tell you what, we're going to have the shortest rip us off the card in the universe. 3 minutes, bang, done. Sorry, got to go watch an episode of Andor. It should be fantastic. The last episode is in a couple of days' time, season finale. Chances are they'll leave it hanging on a thread, because it's a bit of a shit. It was meant to go for 5 seasons, I believe. They're now reduced it to 2. Make of that what you will. And it should be absolutely fantastic. But we are getting there. Next week is our last episode. So be sure to join us for that at the very least, and see what our thoughts and views are on it. In the interim, if you want to go to the dinner, make sure you let us know. You can't just turn up. We have to know in advance so we can book the table and the numbers. But it looks like it's going to be a bit of a successful night. It should be very groovy. Any final words before we sign off for tonight, Mr. Aaron?
No, I'm just dwelling on your thing. There's always a bigger squiggly. So after the show, we can work out who's got the bigger squiggly.
Mate, don't go knock on the squigglies, all right? Maybe they're blue like the freaking pelicans on the freaking multi-horned goats.
If it's blue, I think you need to take it to the free clinic.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, you go to a costume expo thing, he's just wearing all his white paste. He's like, what are you? I'm a squiggly. It's just so wrong on so many levels. All right, we'll leave you to it. See you next week, guys. Enjoy yourselves and get ready for the last episode on Wednesday. Okay? See you later. Bye for now.
Have a good night. See you.